Every text is a purpose or a motive alleged, or an appearance assumed, in order to cloak the real intention or state of affairs.
Initial access. OMI is trying to get into your network.
Listen, this is your manager, and I'm trying to send off an email. I got this document. Need you to confirm a few details. So go ahead and log in and tell me what you think. I need this now, so to make this convenient, here is the link. I'm a threat actor, fishing mark for email is urgent to distract you with it. So how fast you clicked it when you submitted the form with your password in it. You probably couldn't tell there was an actual difference in the URL. The domains look alike though, and to you it looked fine though, but mine had typos and make it look like yours. See, I was in the mood today to make your account a communal space, but then you activated your trap card, and I saw you had 2FA, but I just shrugged. I'ma shake it off. Got on kid gloves, I'ma take them off. Got your phone number, I'ma make a call. I'ma break this wall, it just makes me lol. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking. Yeah. Hello. Hi. I'm calling you from the IT department. We have been under attack by some hackers, and we think that your account might be a target.
Oh no, how do I fix this?
No need to worry, I wrote up a ticket. You'll get a notification from your authenticator app, so please pass me them digits.
1 sec.
Okay.
Yeah. The code is 112345.
Thank you. You fell for the lie, so I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. Cutting it short like a crew cut. Probably think it won't happen to you, but it happened to Uber. They say you win some, you lose some. Boys got a smooth touch hacking you too, bruh. You know how I be creeping, and I'm logging in your VPN. It probably looks anomalous. Some logs if you be keeping them, and probably unaware about the shares that have been peeping. And the reason I'll be seeking them, I'm looking for an easy win. You probably thought it was a magic trick, and you're mad you clicked. I'ma stack my chips and bet that a DA password is sitting in an admin script. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking. I'm moving quick, I'm on a mission. Yeah, I heard your network is lit. I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm trying to get me a hit. When I go fishing. Yeah, you probably think it's legit. I got you clicking.
Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Generative AI in Azure. So glad to have you all joining us today. So with me here is my co-host, Kenny. How are you doing today?
I'm good. That's everything I meant.
Yeah, busy. I guess that's the only answer for now. And everyone, you really need to say thanks to Kenny because there was like the time change that happened like that happened recently, like in UK, and it messed up my calendar. So it was Kenny that reminded me and said, "David, are you not jumping on the call today?" So apologies. That was the reason why we were starting late, was because I missed track. I missed track of time due to all the time changes that happened. But anyways, we're here now. Okay, so Kenny, how's everything been going in terms of like your study with AI and everything else? Hope it's been going
It's
okay.
been great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been great.
Has there been any interesting news or information that you got about AI recently that's like, oh, that's interesting. What's going on here? Or nothing, nothing going on in terms of an AI world. Okay.
No, I'm not sure. There will always be something new, but I'm not up to date on that.
Oh, okay. So, like, one of the things that I try to do is like, I try to stay up to date in terms of like what's going on. It's probably very difficult to do. I don't think anybody stays up to date with everything. But one of the ways that I do that, by the way, is I have like a group of my friends. So we're in a study group. So we actually do like study group every Tuesdays and every Thursdays, and we meet just for 1 hour so that it's not going to be too long. So 1 hour every Tuesday, 1 hour every Thursday, I meet with my friends and we just talk about AI. And they share anything that they found. I share what I found. Everybody discusses. We talk about all kinds of stuff. So that's like one way that I use to like stay up to date. So in terms of like maybe any recent things that's been going on, I think OpenAI announced their new AI browser. I'm not sure if you've heard about that or seen that. So they have a new
No.
AI browser that they announced. I think it's called Atlas. So, and it's a very interesting one. I'm not sure if you've seen like an AI browser before, Kenny. An
No.
example of what that looks like. It's a very interesting one. So maybe I'll just show a little bit of that before we go into MCP today. So you have like this different version of like the web, right? So let me go very quickly. Let me go to cariscloud.com. Okay, I'll share my screen very quickly with you. So let me know when you can see my screen. Let's go to share screen, and I'll go to share entire screen. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I
Hopefully.
can.
Ah, nice. Okay, and we got a loop of. So let's go to this one. So you can see my screen, right? You can see where I've got like cariscloud.com, right?
Yes.
So this is like my website, right? So, but one of the very interesting things is you have like this new agentic browser. So, for example, I can interact with these web pages directly using this AI assistant, for example. So, for example, on my website, I have like this form that you can fill if you want to contact me, maybe to book a training or something. So maybe I go here and I say, fill the form for me. First name Kenny, last name Kilanko, phone number 111-222-333, organization high tech. So now if you have a look at that, I'm interacting with the web like using agents essentially. So look at what will happen in a minute. So you can see that it's filling in the form for me, right?
Yes. So this is
So you
basically
can
like
imagine
an agent embedded inside the browser.
exactly. And that changes your experience of the web, right? Because now the
Yes.
web is not just something that you're just surfing statically or stuff like that. It's something that you can actually communicate with. So I can say, oh, maybe I found some information over here. I can say, take all this information, construct a graph for me based on all of this information on this one, right? Or maybe I'm browsing through, let's say, like an application on the web, and I say, okay, take all the data from this application, format it in this way, output it in this way, or write a documentation for me based on what I'm doing. So there's so many use cases that you can do with this, right? So this is like, you hear more and more about this. So this is part of like what, it's like referred to as of like the agentic web, right? That's happening. Okay, so that is one of the news that I have to share. But let's go over. So this week we said we're going to talk about MCP. So let's get straight to the point talking about MCP, Kenny. So here is a challenge. The challenge that we have, and it's not a new challenge. You've talked about it actually in your last session, Kenny. You talked about this challenge. The challenge is we have all these LLMs that we are working with, but the LLMs are limited in terms of the data
Knowledge.
that they have access to, right? So because like in your session, I remember you talked about RAG.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about RAG and you said, okay, we have RAG that we can use to get additional data and make it available to the LLM. Okay. But then now when we're talking about agents, we're talking about tools. The LLM may need tools to be able to take certain actions in certain scenarios. Without MCP, what we need to do is we need to build the integration for each service that we want to integrate it. We need to build the integration separately. So that's the challenge. If we want an LLM to be able to interact with a service, then the integration needs to be built separately. But what happened was a company called Anthropic came out with a protocol called the MCP protocol. And the MCP protocol, what it does, it standardizes how LLMs can communicate with external services. External service can be anything. It could be a database. It could be a CRM system. It could be an hospital management system. It could be a version control software. It could be anything. However, there is a standard way that LLMs can then use to communicate with these external services. So that was developed by a company called Anthropic, and now it's an open standard, but that's essentially what MCP is. And the way to also explain it is like we have, there's a popular way to explain it is you have your PC, and your PC needs to connect to multiple hardware. You need to connect to a microphone. You need to connect to a webcam. You need to connect to a keyboard and all the other stuff. So, but we have a single standard called the USB that we can use. So whether you're connecting a microphone, you use a USB. Whether you're connecting to a printer, you use a USB. So that is a standard. So it makes life easier. That is what MCP does in the LLM world. It gives us a standard that we can use to connect to external services using the same protocol. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Nice. Okay. So the next question will now be how do we implement MCP in Azure AI Foundry? So that's what we're going to demonstrate today. How do we implement MCP in Azure AI Foundry? Here's one of the things to know now, Kenny, when we're working in Azure AI Foundry. With Azure AI Foundry, there are two approaches that we have to create agents. You know what those two approaches are? We want to create agents. There are two approaches that we have to create agents. One of the approaches you actually showed us in one of your sessions. Kenny's like, oh, what? But David putting me on the spot again.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So there are two
But like,
approaches. Yeah, to
yeah.
create agents. We can create agents in the UI, like you showed us the last time. You come over here and then you click create an agent, right? And then we can add knowledge to our agent. We can add tools, actions, right, to our agent. We can add other agents to the agent using connected agents. So that's using the UI. However, this is not the only way to create agents in Azure AI Foundry. The other way is to use code to create agents. So we can either use the UI or we can use code. The thing is, if we're using the UI, there are limitations to the kind of integrations that we can do. If we're using code, we have the ability to use more integration options than if we're using the UI. The reason why I bring this up is if we want to implement something like MCP in Azure AI Foundry, at the moment, we can't do that through the UI. We have to do that through code at the moment. That may change, but at the moment, that's the way that it is. So for example, if I go over here and I have my new agent, if I go to add a tool, there is no option to add MCP here, right? I can add an Azure Logic App, I can add a code interpreter, I can add an API, I can add a but I cannot add MCP. So if I want to do MCP, what I need to do is I need to do that in code. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now let's go try to do that. So here's one of the things that I'll quickly show you as an example. So what I will do is I'll build an agent in code, and my agent will communicate with an external service using MCP. And I'll show you what that looks like. So what we'll have is we have an MCP server. The MCP server, I will show you what that looks like in a minute. So what that does, it's going to be hosting information. Information about the external service that we want to connect to. That is what this will be hosting. The information that it will be hosting are based in different sections. So for example, it will host information about what resources are available and also what tools are available in the external service that we want to connect to. And then what we'll do is that when we build our agent using code, within our agent, we'll instantiate an MCP client. So we'll instantiate an MCP client, which will use the MCP protocol to communicate with this server. So here's what the flow will look like. Kenny is communicating with this agent. Kenny says, I want to do ABC. The agent looks at the tools that's available. And then you can use the MCP client to say, hey, go talk to your MCP servers. Let me know what tools are available on that MCP server. And then the information comes back and says, here are the tools that are available. So it looks at the tools, look at the description of the tools. If it finds a tool that matches the description of what Kenny says I want to do, then it says, okay, I found a tool in that MCP server over there. So MCP client, can you go help me communicate using that tool to that external service to take this action? Does that make sense?
Yes, that's
Nice. Okay, so that's the basis of it. So let's go test it out very quickly. So I have some instructions that I'll publish later. And let's see. So let's start first by just seeing the MCP that I'll be integrating with. What does that look like? So the MCP that's the MCP server address there. learn.microsoft.com/API/MCP. By the way, if there are different MCP servers that are out there. There is mcp.io, I believe that's what it's called. So let's go mcp.io. No. MCP, maybe it's .so. MCP registry. Let's do that. So actually, there's a popular one. It's called mcp.so, I think. Let me check. Let's check. I think it's mcp.so. Yeah, that's the one, mcp.so. So mcp.so, here you can see a list of different MCP servers for different services, right? So for example, give me a service that, let's say, like maybe a database service, an application service that maybe you use. Let's see if there's an MCP for it.
How about when someone wants to retrieve maybe data from Yahoo Finance, for example?
Yahoo Finance, let's see. Is the Yahoo Finance MCP that exists? So let's see. So I can't see Yahoo Finance here, but it may exist, right? But I can see like other stuff, like let's say there is, 1 minute, let me just check that. We've got 1 minute very quickly. Okay, but you can see here that there's others for like, let's say Alpha Vantage. I'm not sure what that is. Let me just search for finance and see if there's anything here that comes up relating to finance. By the way, this is not the only MCP registry that exists out on the internet. There's tons of them, right? Oh, actually there is. Here is Yahoo Finance. Yeah, there you go. There's Yahoo Finance MCP. So that way, now imagine you've got Yahoo Finance MCP, you've got your LLM, your agent, you can connect it to this one, and then that becomes one of the tools that you can call in your LLM. And then maybe you connect it to Yahoo Finance and other types of finance that exist out there. And then, your agent all of a sudden has access to all these services. So that's the power of this. So the one that I'm implementing is this one. So let's go see what that looks like very quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to query this MCP server. I just want to say, just give me some information about you. What's what's available. Let's see. So I'm going to be using just the call command to do this very quickly. So let's paste that. And let's see the information that it's giving me. So in this case, you can see it's giving me the information. It says that's the protocol of the MCP server, login, prompt, resources, and tools. So let's query it a bit further, Kenny. So let's query it and say, I want to check the tools that are available in this MCP server. So I'm going to use that. So by the way, I'm just querying it now just on the command line here. We'll go to the agent in a minute. So let me paste this. So now look at that. I asked it and said, give me information about the tools that are available on this MCP server. And it says, yeah, the tools that are available. There is a tool called Microsoft Doc Search. There is a description of what this tool can do. Here is another tool called Code Sample Search. There is a description of what that tool can do. Here is another tool called Docs Fetch. So you get the point, right? It gives a list of all the tools that it has access to. So if you call the one for Yahoo Finance, it will have its own set of tools that's available that the LLM can use. So apart from the tools, so if we, for example, we can test a tool call, but instead of testing it here, let's actually go implement our agent. So to go build our agent using code, Kenny, we need something called the Azure AI Foundry SDK. Azure AI Foundry SDK. So what this does is this gives us the library that we can use to build agents on our system. So we need that. So we need that on our system. So let's go and get ready to go. I have a sample code here that I'm going to clone. And let's take it from there. So let's clear the screen. Let me clone the sample code, and then I'll just show you what that looks like. So what am I doing there? I'm just downloading code that exists in that location, just downloading it here. So let's clear the screen. Let's go to the next thing, which is, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new Python environment. And then I'm going to install the Azure AI project, which is again part of like the AI Foundry SDK. And I'm also going to install the MCP library, right? So I'm going to install both libraries in the environment. So let me go do that. So let's run that. So what it's doing is downloading the library
I have
that we
one
need to
question.
implement. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so when coding the MCP, is it limited to a particular programming language? Or
Good question. So we're not limited to a particular coding language. What matters is what languages are supported by the SDK that we're using. That is what matters. So if I go to Azure AI Foundry SDK, right? So you see here that it supports like Python, C#, JavaScript, and Java. So those are the 4 languages that they support at the moment. So if you're building an agent that's an Azure AI Foundry agent, then you need to use one of those 4 supported programming languages. Does that make sense?
yes.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. So that's like what matters. So here, in this case, we're just using Python. So let's go back to the code that we're building. So let's let's continue with this. So we've added libraries. So there are a few things that we need to do because we need to be able to connect to our projects in Azure. So we need to give it the connection information. So I'll just quickly do that now. So, and the information that we need to add here, we need to add information about our project endpoints and the model that we want this agent to use, the model deployment. So let me just go over here. Let me go back. So the model deployment, let me make sure that I have the right one. My model deployment is GPT-4o. That's good. I have the right one. But then what I need to do is I need to get my project endpoint. And by the way, so this is David 5119. Let me just quickly do something. Let's go to Azure AI Foundry. Let's go to all resources and check that is in which subscription. So that becomes important for what I'm trying to demo. So that's in Cloud Cloud Azure sponsorship subscription. Let me just make sure I'm in that subscription very quickly. So I'll just check that I'm in the right subscription. So let's do AZ account show. So which, oh, I'm in the wrong subscription. So I need to change that subscription. So let's do AZ account list dash O table and AZ account set. So what I'm just doing is I'm just changing my Azure subscription to the one where I've got my AI Foundry projects. Copy and paste that. So clear the screen. And if I do AZ account show again, it should not show me I'm in that subscription. That's good. Okay. So let's clear the screen. Let's continue with this. So I need to get my project endpoint. So my project endpoint, I'll find that on the overview of the project. And I can see my Azure AI Foundry project endpoint. So I'll just copy that and I'll paste it here. So there you go. So let's save that. So now the information that will be needed to connect to the Foundry project is there. What other information do I need to do? So I need to modify the code very quickly. So let's go do that. So the code, by the way, this is the agent. So let's go do this. Save. And then let's go modify the code. So here's a very interesting thing, Kenny. You know, we defined our agent earlier, right? We said an agent, you know, it has the model, it has instruction, it has tool, it has knowledge, and all of that stuff. So are the components of the agent. But here's one other thing that I want you and the audience to take away from this. An agent is actually an application. It's an application. But it's an application that we don't need to add code things into. It's an application that will give the components that we discussed earlier. So it's an application that we create, but then instead of statically building functions, we say here is a model that you can use to think. There are tools that you can call. So you are autonomous. Think for yourself. But at the end of the day, it is an application. So what we're doing here, don't let it look strange to you because you're like, you know, we're used to building the agents in the UI. But at the end of the day, the agent is just an application that's using LLMs to think, to plan, and to make decisions. That's all it is. It's an application at the end of the day. So well, what we're doing here is we're just creating our agents using code. So I'll just copy this one and then I'll walk through some aspects very quickly. So I'll copy the code, I'll paste it, and then I'll walk through some aspects very quickly. So let's copy that. Let's go here. So I won't go through everything here, Kenny. I just want to show you like the key things here. So the first thing is that the agent needs to be able to connect to the project endpoints and the model. So we've given it that information here. The other thing is that we create the agent client, which will be the one that will be the actual agent. And in this case, we specify the MCP server that we want it to use, that we want to make available to it. And then we initialize or we give it an MCP client. So what we're doing here, Kenny, is the same thing as what you do in the console. When you go to under agents and you select your agent and you say add tools and you do this and you go add. That's exactly what we're doing here. But instead of doing that in the UI, what we're doing there is we're saying we want to add some tools to you. And then we have say, here is a tool that we want to add. It's an MCP tool. If we want to add a tool that is going to do code interpreter, we'll just change that from MCP2 to code interpreter 2. If we want to add other types of tools to it, we'll just change that and just change that to the right class of the tool that we want to add. So that's essentially what we're doing. And after we've initialized the tool that we want to use, we then say to the agent, here is the agents that we're creating. So you can see that it looks like what we're doing in the UI, right? Where I saying create agents. It says, what model will I use? You say, go look to model deployment. That's what you use. What's the name of the agent? This will be the name of the agent. What's the instructions of the agent? This will be the instructions. That's exactly what we do here, right? Because when we come here, what we do is we can give our agent a name, we specify the deployment, we specify the instructions, right? So that's exactly the same thing that we're doing here. And now we've now given it a tool, the MCP2 that it can use. So which is what we've done here. So what we'll do is let's go to run this and let's see what the result looks like very quickly. So what I'll do very quickly is I'll go to sign in to Azure so that I can run the code. Save. So I'll just sign into Azure so I can authenticate. Put in the code, sign in using the code, continue, and it should sign me in here. So there we go. So it signed me in, and then it's going to say which one do I want to use. No changes. Keep my subscription. So now I'm signed into Azure. So now let's go run our code. So I'm just going to run the agents, and let's paste it. What's it complaining about? Oh, okay. It didn't install like one of the modules. So let's just go check. So let's try this again. Oh, you know what? Let's try this. Python. Let's do this. Can we? Okay. So then let's do this. I think I see why. Okay, so my bad, Kenny. So in Bash, I need to switch to PowerShell. So my bad, let's switch to PowerShell. And let's do what we've done again. So I can see that I made a mistake there. But here's one of the good thing about Cloud Shell is that Cloud Shell, if I do code, let's go first of all to where my code is. So let's go to this location. If my code is there, then all the information that I saved should still be there. There we go. So that's good. We're back in business. So let's just go to run this again, and our code should work this time around. So there we go. That's better. And then let's go install that. So what happened, Kenny, by the way, is that the libraries that I was meant to install here, it didn't install because I was not in PowerShell, I was in Bash. So that's why that didn't work. So let's install the libraries. So hopefully this time, there we go. That's better. So that's better. And once that's done, there we go. Let's clear the screen. There we go. And now let's go ahead and let's run our code again and see what results that we get this time around. So let's run the agents. and we run that in the command line. By the way, let me just open code client.py. Okay, so that's our code, which is for our agent. But let's run it. Code.env. Let's make sure we still have the variables. That's good. Okay, let's run that again, just to be safe. Okay, so let's run that again. So there's a moment of truth. There we go. Look at that. Our agent is active now. So what it has done is it's running the agent, and the agent is now saying, "How can I help?" Which is the instruction that we gave the agent. So let's scroll and see. So we said, when you start running, ask the user, "How can I help?" So now let's go ask it a few questions and let us see what will happen here, Kenny. So I want you to see what will happen in this case. So let's ask it a question about something that the agent may not know by itself. So I'm going to ask it to give me the Azure CLI command to create an Azure Container App with managed identity. So I copy that and I paste this. So what will happen is the agent will go, I don't have this information internally, so it's going to start looking, do I have access to any tools? And then it should find the MCP tool. And there you go. So that happened very quickly, but let's go back. You see like what happened here. So the agent went, I've been hacked some information. It looked in its data and it goes, I don't have access to this data, right? To be able to answer this question. So then it looks and says, which tools do I have? So when it started looking around for tools, he found a tool that we gave it, which is the Microsoft Learn tool. We found that tool. So remember, we gave it a tool earlier, this tool, which gives it the Microsoft Learn tool. So he found that tool via MCP. And then it now made a call to the tool to say, it found the MCP server. It now made a call to the MCP server to say, give me a list of tools that you have. The MCP server replied with a list of tools. Now, out of all the list of tools that it got back, it went, this one is probably the most appropriate tool to use to answer this question. So then it now made a call to that tool and say, can you give me this information? And sent that to that tool, and the tool sent it to the service, which does what it does, returns the reply, and now I have the reply in the console here. Does that make sense, Kenny?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so that's it. That's it in a nutshell. That's the end of the demo. That is MCP, using MCP in Azure AI Foundry. So let's summarize very quickly what we got from today. MCP is a way to standardize connectivity between agents or LLMs and external services, instead of having individual integration for each external service that you want to connect to. So now, if you think about what we just did now, Kenny, if you want to plug in to Yahoo Finance, there's not a lot that you need to change in this code. The key thing that you need to change in this code is the server that we are connecting to, because the protocol is the same, right? So you just need to switch the server to the server that we want to connect to, and you'll be able to use that. So now this makes it easy for agent or LLMs to connect to external tools. So, okay, so that will be it for today. Any question that comes to mind? Any question from our audience also? Be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Let's see, is there any questions? Oh, actually, there's a lot of questions in the chat window. Let's see. So someone, Adekunle said, I have a question, please. Okay, let's see Adekunle's question. So Kenny, the question will be coming to you. So get ready. How can generative AI models be used to drive innovation and improve efficiency in industries such as healthcare, finance, and education? Kenny, do you want to take that?
I think it's part of like the conversations that we had the last time, like integrating them into the work process.
Mm.
Because what agent does is automating repetitive tasks. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
it for that question.
I completely agree with what Kenny said. So there's so many like different use cases, healthcare, finance, education.
Finance and
Education,
education.
yeah, education is like I mean, it's an amazing use case. You think about it, like you can have
Yeah.
the most quality teacher available to anyone, right? So like you've got like these models that have got tons of knowledge in them, and they can present the knowledge that you want. And the same with healthcare. I discussed this with Kenny the last time. Like I have my wife and I, we have a baby. The baby has an agent, right? So if the baby is doing anything, the first thing I do is I take a picture or video. I send it to the baby's agent and I say, help me. I'm a first time dad. I don't know what I'm doing. Help me figure out what is this. If I see something on his eyes, if I even call the doctor, I take a picture and I go to the baby's agent and I go, baby's agent, you have the health record of the baby and everything about the baby. What's this thing that I can see on his eye here? Is this normal? It's like, yeah, it's normal for newborn. It will go away by itself in the next 2 weeks. I'm like, thank you very much. So yeah. So let's see the next question. What are some potential challenges and considerations when implementing generative AI solutions in a business or organization setting, and how can they be addressed? So, Kenny, I'll let you have a go at answering this one also. So,
Um, I think for potential challenges, I'll say that's in terms of, like I mentioned the last time too, I mentioned
mhm,
data security, but these
mhm,
issues will always come up.
yeah,
These issues will always come up, yeah.
yeah,
So, when implementing it in organization settings, yeah, I think that's it.
yeah. And like one key point
So you
to
can
how
just
to
bucket.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I can just buttress Kenny's point. There's one aspect that comes to mind that I want to add to that. One aspect which is the different reasons. If you think about it, let's think about it this way, Kenny, and to Adekunle that asked the question. A lot of organizations are talking and hyping about AI these days, generative AI, right? Now, if I
Yeah.
ask a question, I say, Kenny, how many banking applications are you using in Nigeria that are currently using LLM or generative AI capabilities that you know of?
As for the banks I'm banking with at the moment, none.
What about schools that you know of in Nigeria that are actively using like LLMs as part of like their workflows and their processes?
Schools, I'm not sure. We're just beginning to embrace it in this part of the world here. So it's
Yeah,
not yet a common thing.
yeah.
And
And
I
and
also
really,
mentioned that some sectors or some set of people will embrace AI faster than the rest. Yeah.
yeah,
So I think one of the sectors that is going to embrace it faster will be finance, definitely. Finance, education, yeah.
mm,
Then
yeah,
healthcare too, eventually. Maybe public
mhm,
healthcare.
yeah. So do you foresee like a situation where healthcare providers in Nigeria, for example, LLMs will be a normal part of their workflow? Do you really see that happening in the next 1 year or 2 years?
Next 1 year or 2 years, probably, probably, yeah,
So because like it's back to like the question that Adekunle is asking, because what are the challenges why they are not being adopted? And one of those challenges is skill. That's one big
yes,
reason. For example, if they have someone like Kenny working as the head of IT of like let's say an healthcare provider in Nigeria. Now, some of these ideas, because you are exposed to them, because you have the skills for them, those are things that you start going, okay, how can we optimize our processes using these technologies, right? So, skill is one of the
yeah,
challenges to people adopting this, a big
yeah,
challenge, because that's a point of friction that organizations have to deal with, right? Um, so, Another one, which is a little bit more subtle, is trust. Is another one. Because what you actually find out if you look at some of the surveys is that as more organizations are talking about adopting LLMs, and you do, and the survey that there was one that comes to my mind now. So they've been tracking LLM generative AI trust since for the past 4 years. What you notice that more people are saying we trust LLMs less. Than it's very interesting. When I saw the data, I was like, this is very interesting. But they've been tracking it for like the past 4 years, and it's like we trust it less. There's a reason for that, because in some situations, people um, have had like half-baked implementations, which has led to less trust. I'll give you an example. At work, like I won't mention like in terms of like where at work, but I'll just say at work. Like what I found is that people like that are meant to deliver certain things for me to process at work, they're using AI to do those stuff. And then they send them to me. And then when I have a look at that, I'm like, about 80% of this is wrong. Like 80% is like 80% of what you're saying, but they just send it over. They're like, done, David, I'm done. Boom. Send it over to David. And then David is like, now I've got to stay awake all night cleaning up all this mess because this is absolute nonsense. 80% of it is completely wrong. Just making things up.
I
So
think that comes to be. I remember seeing something yesterday. They said AI will stop giving legal advices. It's because people are misusing it already.
exactly. So instead of doing like things like what you taught us the last time, implementing proper RAG, making
Yeah.
sure that the data in that RAG is well sanitized, making sure that you have the proper tools and all of that. People just take like the vanilla LLM and just start asking it all kinds of legal questions. And because it brings all sorts of answers confidently, people go, yeah, Kenny, here's a legal advice for you. And you're like, this legal advice will end me in prison if I follow this advice. But that's like what, and then what happens is that reduces the trust. So it also like something for us as practitioners to make sure that maybe as we engage with organizations in implementing some of these things, let's try to do things a little bit more different, a little bit more thorough, right? Just so that we be a little bit more thorough in terms of the implementations to make sure that at least there's well-defined quality assurance QA that happens, and to make sure that we get the right result. So that's what I will add to use to buttress Kenny's point earlier.
I also add the fact that the future of work generally is where, for all roles now, not even for some specific roles, where people are able to collaborate with AI, not depend solely on it now. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. It's going to be like a collaboration. And what you know what the point that you're bringing up is very interesting to me. I was again, I do like a lot of like this reading around, and it's a very interesting one because what they're finding is that people think this will make my work. There's vibe coding, right? People do vibe coding, right? You've heard of the
Yeah.
term vibe coding, right? And there's another term that came out recently called vibe working. So everything for the new generation is vibing. So like let's vibe code, let's vibe work. Or there was like one article that I was reading. The title of the article is "Vibe Working is Work." Because people, the term vibe working, people think, oh, I just get AI to do like all the stuff, but that's not the way it works. What people have found out is that people that are actually using these tools is that it's just shifting where you're working. Have you ever tried to use an LLM to build a solid application before?
No.
I would recommend try it out, and see what your experience will be like. It's a very interesting thing. Just try it out to say, I'm going to use this to build like a complete. Just think of an application that would do some interesting thing, and say, I'm going to use this to build that. Try it out and see how it works. Because what I've also found, I found that article to be true. Because it's just shifting where I'm putting focus of my work. So now, instead of me completely, like for example, with my colleagues, instead of me completely like, let's say, writing everything from scratch, I'm spending a lot of my time fact checking. I'm rewriting, I'm modifying, and cleaning up what they've done. Now, it's still a lot of work for me. My work has not reduced. I'm just shifting my work from the initial writing to now. Before it used to be like, and this when we are in the spend 80% writing, 20% cleaning up. Now it's 20% writing, 80% cleaning up. Clean up what the agent has written. So agent does the stuff. I clean up like 80% of my work is now cleaning up what it has done. So interesting. Okay, so that will be all for us today. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. So we'll see you again in the next 2 weeks. And the next 2 weeks, I think, like maybe Kenny will have something for us, or Kenny will be looking forward to seeing another talk, maybe on data analysis and AI, or any other interesting thing that comes to your mind. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Have a lovely rest of the day, afternoon, evening. Bye for now.
All right.